What should be done with a horrifying gang that can raid villages and towns in town, carry out robberies, and kidnap people? They don't stop there but commit heinous crimes like dismembering people and sexually violating women in front of their families to instill fear. For years, such a gang has operated in the Democratic Republic of Congo, staying away from the hands of law enforcement agencies. However, the currency government said enough is enough and has launched a crackdown operation against the gang. Everyone believed that this operation would be just like any other, to show that the government was doing something. However, people were shocked when 102 young members of the gang were executed, showing no mercy. But is it really true that the government of Congo is executing hundreds of members of the Kuluna gang? In this video, let's know about the reality of the Operation Zero Kuluna. Let's get started. First, let's understand what violence and chaos the Kuluna gang carried out. In Congo, the Kuluna gang has been a name synonymous with fear and brutality. Known for their ruthless crimes, the gang's activities have inflicted deep scars on countless victims and communities, creating an environment of fear and suffering. The gang originated in the urban chaos of Congo's cities, born out of decades of socioeconomic decline, chronic poverty, widespread unemployment, and a crumbling social infrastructure provided fertile ground for criminal organizations like the Kuluna to thrive. Young men, many of whom lacked access to education or viable employment opportunities, turned to the gang as a means of survival. The term Kuluna, derived from the Lingala language, loosely translates to thugs or urban bandits, and has come to symbolize organized gangs notorious for extreme violence and terror. One of the Kuluna's hallmark crimes is robbery, executed with a combination of violence and meticulous planning. Victims, whether individuals, businesses, or entire families, are ambushed, beaten, or killed. Armed with machetes, spiked clubs, and firearms, gang members use intimidation to overpower their targets. In some cases, they storm homes under the cover of night, holding families hostage while looting valuables. Resistance is often met with severe beatings or death, leaving survivors physically and emotionally scarred. Even the Kuluna are infamous for unprovoked assaults, leaving victims maimed or disfigured. Survivors of these attacks frequently tell horrifying stories of machete wounds and broken limbs, inflicted not just to subdue, but to instill lasting fear and submission. Murders committed by the gang are equally brutal, ranging from stabbings and shootings to acts of revenge that decimate entire families. Sexual violence is among the most heinous crimes committed by the Kuluna, with women and children often targeted during robberies or abductions. Rape and sexual assault are used as weapons of control, humiliation, and panic. Survivors frequently avoid reporting such crimes due to fear of retaliation, leaving many of these atrocities unpunished. The gang's extortion practices further deepen the plight of already struggling communities. They impose taxes on residents and businesses in areas under their control, enforcing payments through threats of violence. For small business owners and impoverished families, this extortion exacerbates economic hardships, making daily life a constant battle for survival. The gang's public intimidation tactics, often executed in broad daylight in bustling markets or transit hubs, intensify their reign of panic, paralyzing communities and eroding public confidence in law enforcement. A particularly insidious aspect of the Kuluna's operations is their recruitment of minors, some as young as 12 years old. These children are coerced into participating in violent crimes, perpetuating a cycle of brutality that normalizes extreme violence from an early age. This recruitment strategy not only ensures the gang's continuity, but also undermines the potential for rehabilitation among Congo's youth. The impact of the Kuluna's crimes reverberates across all levels of society. On an individual level, victims endure life-altering consequences, from physical injuries to profound psychological trauma. Women and children, often the most vulnerable, bear the brunt of the gang's sexual violence, suffering long-lasting emotional scars. Entire communities have been destabilized, with neighborhoods transformed into zones of fear and distrust. Businesses close early, residents avoid going out at night, and local economies are crippled under the weight of extortion and violence. In this context of increasing gangs' heinous crimes and mounting public pressure, the Congolese government launched Operation Zero Kuluna, a campaign aimed at eradicating the gang. Literally, this initiative has seen mass arrests, public trials, and even executions of suspected Kuluna members. While some view these measures as necessary to restore order, others criticize them for human rights violations, lack of due process, and the risk of wrongful convictions. The government's approach has sparked intense debate, raising questions about the balance between justice and rehabilitation. However, the government doesn't care about it. The Minister of Justice, Constant Mutamba, announced that no mercy would be shown, given the intensity of the crimes the Kuluna gang members carried out for years. He announced that a zero-tolerance policy would be implemented and no member of the gang would be spared. All of them will be executed as they are captured until the cities are cleansed. Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black Africa. Let's continue now. This initiative represents one of the most hardline responses to gang violence in recent history. Operation Zero Kuluna has been marked by mass arrests, public trials, and a controversial use of capital punishment. Between late 2023 and early 2024, over 300 individuals suspected of being Kuluna members were arrested and convicted. Among them, 127 were sentenced to death. To date, 102 gang members have been executed at Njenga prison in Mongala province, with 70 more prisoners reportedly awaiting execution. Mutamba has justified these measures as essential to restoring order and protecting law-abiding citizens. The executions have been carried out with efficiency, showing the government's determination to send a clear message. Gang violence will no longer be tolerated. In the face of tearful pleas for mercy from the convicted individuals, the government has remained unmoved, allowing only a final moment of prayer before carrying out the sentences. Mutamba's defense of this approach is rooted in his belief that such extreme actions are necessary to reclaim the streets and ensure public safety. However, capital punishment has been banned in Congo until now. Abolished in 1981, the death penalty was reinstated in 2006, but has not been used on civilians. The decision to resume executions in 2024 was initially intended to address cases of treason within the military. However, the scope has since expanded to include gang-related crimes, particularly those linked to the Kuluna. This marked a dramatic escalation in the government's efforts to address the security crisis. Yet, critics have raised concerns about the fairness and transparency of the judicial process leading to these executions. Congo's justice system is often unable to guarantee fair trials. Human rights organizations have warned of the risks of wrongful convictions and extrajudicial killings. Despite these criticisms, Minister Mutamba has dismissed such concerns, framing the death penalty as a necessary tool to combat the Kuluna's reign of terror. However, critics, particularly from Western nations, often advocate for leniency and rehabilitation for individuals involved in such crimes. They argue that capital punishment undermines human rights and claim it sets a dangerous precedent. While such perspectives may function in the West, where crime and law enforcement operate under vastly different conditions, they fail to account for the unique realities of African nations like the DRC. In the DRC, where law enforcement is under-resourced, the Kuluna gang has flourished. They have exploited these vulnerabilities to create an environment where law-abiding citizens live in constant fear. Calls for mercy or rehabilitation, without addressing the root causes of this crisis, risk enabling further violence and undermining the government's efforts to restore order. Furthermore, it is crucial to consider how similar scenarios would unfold in Western countries. In many cases, gangs of this nature would not even make it to the courts. Law enforcement agencies in Western nations are equipped with resources, training, and policies that enable swift action. Police forces in the United States, for example, have been known to neutralize violent criminals in encounters, often citing imminent threat as justification. A gang like the Kuluna, with its record of violence and impunity, would likely face lethal force long before formal charges could be brought. The disparity in responses highlights the hypocrisy of some Western criticisms. While they demand leniency and due process in African contexts, their own systems often bypass these principles when confronted with extreme violence. It is worth noting that these actions are rarely subject to the same level of scrutiny or condemnation when carried out in the West. In the DRC, showing leniency to the Kuluna gang would not only jeopardize public safety, but also erode the fragile trust between citizens and the government. The Kuluna have exploited systemic weaknesses to create a state of lawlessness where ordinary people are left defenseless. Forgiveness or leniency would encourage other criminal groups and send a dangerous message that heinous crimes can go unpunished. Justice Minister Constant Mutamba's zero-tolerance approach, including the use of capital punishment, is not merely a punitive measure. It is a response born out of necessity. The government is operating in a context where immediate and decisive action is required to protect its citizens and reclaim control over its cities. Critics fail to acknowledge that the alternative, allowing the Kuluna to operate with impunity, would perpetuate cycles of violence and instability. Furthermore, it's the right of the people of Congo to decide what should be done. For a majority of residents, particularly those in areas most affected by Kuluna violence, the executions have been a welcome relief. Citizens of cities like Goma have expressed gratitude for the sense of safety restored by the crackdown. For them, the death penalty is viewed as a deterrent to future crimes and a form of justice for the victims of the gang's brutality. What do you think is the best approach to dealing with these gang members? Should they be punished harshly, like executing all of them? Or should they be given imprisonment sentences only? In the comments section right below, share your thoughts on whether things in Africa should be judged with the Western lens and whether judgments should be passed on events happening in Africa. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If yes, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We bring videos on Black Africa, its history, rich arts and culture, and things the world should know about. Thanks for watching. And until the next video, stay tuned.